Welcome to Crime Most French, a fortnightly podcast covering intriguing cases carried out on French soil. Researched and narrated by Cedric and rudely interrupted by me, Melanie. We're the true crime podcast Old Alliance. Crack open le vin and let the mayhem commence.
This is episode 93, the Richard Roman affair. On the 26th of July 1988, Celine, a 7-year-old, disappears. She's found murdered the next day, and 2 culprits are quickly identified. That's one of the cases I remember from when I was a kid. That was in the news forever, and there's some very rememberable characters in that story.
I see. Is this in whereabout, is it?
Southeast. It's not far from Digne.
Ah, right, okay.
On the 26th of July, Gilbert Jourdan, the owner of the café restaurant in the center of La Motte du Caire, in the Alps, northwest of Digne, comes out of his restaurant at about 8 p.m. to tell his daughter, Celine, 7 years old, who was playing outside, that it's time to come in for the day, for her dinner. La Motte du Caire is a small village of about 480 inhabitants, sometimes isolated, completely cut off from the world in the winter because of the snow. And
I was going to say, when you said it was
yes.
northwest, I mean that of
yes.
Digne, which is kind of like a reasonably sized town, in PACA, but in the very lumpy bit
yes.
away from the coast.
And because it's so small, everybody knows everybody.
Mm.
Gilbert has no reason to be worried about Celine playing outside because that's the 80s and that's how it was.
Mm.
It's normal,
especially in a little village.
Yes, yeah. There would have been other kids playing around.
Yeah, definitely.
Celine normally lives with her mum, Joëlle Morel, in Var on the Mediterranean coast.
Mm.
But she's been with her father for the last 2 weeks. Because she's on holiday, her parents are divorced.
Ah, right, okay, so he's the weekend dad.
He's the holiday dad.
Yeah.
However, looking around, Gilbert can't find Celine. He's not too sure why at first, so he starts looking around in the streets around the restaurant. He goes to her usual spots, he asks neighbors, goes round the village on the roads in his car, can't find her at all, anywhere. So by 10:30, having not found a trace of her or anybody who saw her, he calls the gendarmerie.
I mean, that must be terrifying at that point, when you're 7-year-old and you can't find them at 10 o'clock at night. It must be bone-chilling.
Yes. The gendarmerie also look for her. They are helped by the fire brigade and neighbors, but they can't find her either. They have to stop because it's night at that point and there is no point looking. The next morning, the searches start again, and people get really worried because she's now been missing all night, especially when her shoes are found against a rock near the local river, along a camping site.
Yeah, God.
So everybody thinks that she went into the river and drowned. Finally, her body is found on the same day at 2:40 p.m. in a ditch a few hundred meters from the village. She's half naked. She has no shoes on because they found the shoes earlier. No underwear. She's been raped, tortured, and killed with a big rock that crushed her head.
Oh my God. I don't think this could get any worse, really, could it? That's horrific. Poor Spud.
During the searches, several locals are intrigued by the behavior of one of the volunteers, Didier Gentil, which means Didier nice.
Yes, Gentil, yes.
Yes. He seems super nervous and he talks constantly like he can't stop himself.
Oh no.
He's a drifter who ended up in the village probably because of the apple harvests that they have. They have apple trees. Okay. And they tend to hire low-pay workers and drifters for the season because they're cheap. Didier Gentil has been seen with the girl the previous night at around 8:30 in the street along the cafe, according to some witnesses. So the gendarmes decide to interrogate him. That's just routine. Didier Gentil was born in 1963 in Arnay-le-Duc in the east of France. His father is a sweeper at the naval yards in La Ciotat on the Mediterranean.
Oh, right, okay.
And his mother is a cleaning lady in the Marseille hospital. He has 2 brothers.
Right.
After his parents divorced in 1971, he lives with his mom for a while, but quickly he's taken away from her on the order of a children's judge. There are special judges in France for children.
Oh, right, okay.
And children cases.
Mm.
There are separate judges from the other judges.
So a bit like a pediatrician.
Yeah, he's a special doctor.
Yeah,
Yes, we have special judges as well. He goes from foster home to foster home and spends his years in the system until he's 18. In the system, he's quickly noticed for his total inability to live with others and for his school failures. Needless to say, he has a low IQ and can barely read when he's 18.
Oh, that's such a shame.
He has a nickname, probably given to him by the kids in the village. It's the tattooed, because he has tattoos, I'm guessing. And
okay.
in the 80s, it wasn't...
No, it certainly wasn't...
done thing.
No, it certainly wasn't as prevalent as it is now.
Yes.
No.
Yeah. Now he would be an exception if he didn't have. So.
Yes.
And he arrives at La Motoquet at age 25.
Right.
So during the interrogation, the gendarmes tried to build his timeline for the previous day because they were told that he was with the girl. And the minute they start asking questions, they get a confession.
Oh, God. Now, this guy clearly needs to have a lawyer with him at all times.
Yes, but the problem is he's just been arrested so they can interrogate him for 24 hours.
It's just so horrible when I hear about people that are clearly mentally challenged.
Yes.
Not the sharpest knife in the drawer.
Yep.
They're so malleable. It's just so horrible to watch.
Yeah, the gendarmes realize that he's not even clever enough to have a fake story to explain what he was doing. He just tells them what he did. He tells the gendarmes the details of his previous day.
Mm-hmm.
And that includes murdering the girl. But he also accuses someone else to be his accomplice. And that person is Richard Roman. It's worse than that. Gentil admits to the rape, but he says that he didn't kill the girl, Celine. He charges Roman with the murder. According to him, Roman told him that he wanted to create a sect, a cult, with himself at the top, obviously.
Yeah.
Based on magic and sex.
God. And
Gentil says that Roman had decided that Celine would be his and he wanted to sacrifice her. That's satanic panic. That was the 80s.
I was going to say peak 80s.
Peak 80s, yeah. So Richard Roman was born in 1959 in Ambilly in the Alps, not very far. His father was a career soldier and his mother was a nurse. He has 2 brothers. One is a well-known philosopher and the other one is a researcher in molecular biology.
Now, it's totally different kind of family background.
Yes. He himself has an engineering diploma in agronomy and agriculture.
Right, so he's the dummy of the bunch then. Mind you, I mean...
Yeah, he's the dummy of the bunch, I guess.
Whoever nowadays is a renowned philosopher?
A few people.
I mean, I can only think of one off the top of my head.
Oh no, there's plenty of them.
Today, alive and breathing.
Well, today, alive and breathing, I can name a few.
I mean, Alain
French
de
ones.
Botton is the only one that I can think off the top of my head. But
Okay.
never mind. This
Anyway.
is not a philosophy podcast.
No. In 1984, thanks to a grant from the Ministry of Agriculture, he leaves Paris, where he was working,
Okay.
and buys a farm at Bergerie des Plaines, a few kilometers from La Motoquet. There he establishes his farm and raises sheep.
Yeah, I wouldn't have thought
He's
there's
a
a lot of
shepherd.
agriculture. There's certainly not of
He's
arable land out there.
No, he's a shepherd.
Yes. That's very, very hilly, very barren land.
Yes. He's a bit of a weirdo. For example, he lives all year round in a teepee in front of his house. He doesn't live in the house.
Right.
Even in the snow and ice.
That's hardcore.
Oh, that's harsh in the winter.
Yeah.
You have entire weeks at minus 20 degrees, but he lives in his teepee, doesn't live in a house.
Yeah, it's quite high altitude up there, isn't it?
Yeah. And he walks around bare feet in a loincloth. That's all he wears. So he's a total weirdo.
Yeah, he sounds like a nutter.
Yeah. He welcomes drifters and marginals and of all kinds. He seems to be happy surrounded by people who are down on their luck.
Right.
And he gives them jobs and houses them in the farm.
Okay.
And his nickname, according to kids in town, is the Indian.
Because of the loincloth.
Loincloth, bare feet, lives in the teepee, long hair.
Right.
So, Indian.
Mm-hmm. And obviously Native American.
Yes. On the 27th of July, Gentil is taken for a reenactment near where Celine's body was found.
Mm-hmm.
He shows the gendarmes what he did, and he's still cooperating with them because he's still answering the questions that they ask.
Yeah. Well, I mean, essentially he's the French Forrest Gump, isn't he? So
yeah.
Bless his heart.
A while later, it's Roman's turn, and he shows the same thing to the gendarmes. The reenactments make the gendarmes think that Celine was suffocated first and died before her head was crushed with a rock. That's what they think happened.
Okay, that's a tiny sliver of thankfulness for this poor little girl's life.
One of the gendarmes tells a journalist, I based the podcast on a book written by a journalist, mainly, and a few other sources, but mostly a book written by a journalist, which describes essentially his story when he reported on the case and then investigated to find out what actually happened.
Okay. It's not straightforward then, obviously.
No, it's not completely straightforward, because he describes how he arrived, of course, from Paris, into the small village and found everything weird and all that. So
fish out of water.
Yeah, totally. So I based a lot of the podcast on that.
Okay.
So he mentions that one of the gendarmes told him that Roman confessed as well.
Mm-hmm.
That wasn't public knowledge at the time.
Okay.
In his confession, Gentil says that his role in the murder was to get Celine out of the restaurant and into Roman's Renault 5. But Roman didn't have a car. But he had told Gentil, apparently, according to Gentil, that he would get a car somehow. And Gentil says that he took his mom's car, who had come with one of his cousins, I think, to visit him.
Okay.
And that's where the car came from.
Right.
He himself was just on foot. Because you don't live in a loincloth when you have a car.
No, I mean, really.
That makes no sense.
It's going to be more difficult to drive if you're not driving and not wearing any.
Well, even then, if you don't even have clothes, you're not going to have a car.
No.
Clearly.
You're not going to have. If you're not going to have clothes, you're not going to have shoes. No, you're not going to have shoes. You're not going to have a car.
Yeah. Gentil got Celine out of the main village square at about 8:41 p.m. And he knows exactly the time because he met two young men and asked them what the time was.
Okay.
He didn't even try to hide. He even stayed with them for a while, the two young men, and Celine was with them, for about 10 minutes, until Roman arrived at the rendezvous point, which was a few streets away.
With the mother's car?
With the mother's car.
Okay.
They took Celine to an apple orchard near the village, where Celine was raped and killed. Gentil maintains that he had no intention of doing either, but Roman made him drink and smoke the devil's lettuce, which, according to Gentil, has the effect of turning him nasty and making him forget what he does.
No, that's not.
That's convenient.
Yeah, that's not how weed works. Never mind.
Yes, but according to him, that's the effect. Gentil's confession also changes slightly over time. Mm-hmm. Every time he's interrogated, it kind of varies a little bit.
Right.
He has several versions of how and why Celine was killed, for example. But it's never him. But it's never the same story.
It's kind of weird. He's happy enough to put his hands up to sexual assault, but not ending her life.
Yes. So he's only consistent in the fact that it's not him.
Mm-hmm.
Roman is interrogated too when he gives himself up to the gendarmes because he hears that they're looking for him, so he goes and gives himself up.
Mm.
They recreate his timeline for the day of the murder. pretty much what a shepherd does. There's really nothing in his life that stands out. However, his testimony doesn't match very well with some of witness statements. So people say they saw him in places at certain times, and when he describes what he did, it doesn't match.
Right.
So the gendarmes are kind of puzzled by that, because it's not even... It's even the mundane thing. Like, he went at some point to a shop, and the shopkeeper says he came at that time and did that. But when he tells his story, he doesn't go to the shop.
Well, it doesn't.
It's just, it doesn't match. There's
weird.
some weird thing that's happening here, and the gendarmes have no clue why. They don't understand why he would change or hide things that have absolutely nothing to do with the murder. Or change the times, or change the places, or they just don't understand what's happening.
The two of them seem to be throwing out curveballs.
Yes.
Left, right, and centre.
Yeah. So at first he denies any involvement in the murder. He even denies having met Gentil that evening. And then as the hours pass, he changes his story. He says that maybe he met Gentil that night, he wasn't completely sure, and that maybe Gentil had a little girl with him, he's not sure. In the end, he says that he asks for forgiveness from Celine's parents. That's how he ends his statement. He admits that he raped and killed Celine, but he refuses to give details, which is also weird.
He's admitted to
yes, he admits to the murder, but when they ask him, how did you kill her, he refuses to answer. He refuses to explain. That's very weird, but we'll see later why.
Okay.
He is interrogated over the next few days, and he continues his statement over several sessions, and eventually he gives details of the murder that kind of match Gentil's version fairly okay. He even says that he's the one who killed her.
Right. So their stories...
So now, eventually, their stories kind of work.
Not like a jigsaw, but close enough for
close
jazz.
Enough.
Yeah.
However, when he's taken to the judge to be notified of the charges, because when you're arrested and the police thinks that they have enough to send you to trial, you're sent to a judge, and then you're charged.
Yeah.
The judge tells you you're charged for blah, blah, blah. When he's sent to the judge and sent to prison, he withdraws his confession, and he says that it was extracted under torture and intimidation.
Torture?
Yes, they said that they didn't allow him to drink, that he was kind of beaten up in a way that doesn't leave traces, and this kind of stuff.
That's a bit unlikely.
There's no proof of it.
No, of course not.
He can't prove it.
Of course not.
But what's crazy, though, is that the two guys were interrogated in the village where the murder was committed, surrounded by a crowd that vowed to kill them.
Holy crap.
So essentially the police station was constantly surrounded by people who wanted to kill them. Gendarmes could have moved them to Aix-en-Provence, for example, the capital of the regions, miles and miles away.
That might have been a better idea.
And it would have been quieter.
Yeah.
But they don't. And nobody understands why it didn't happen, because that was crazy to interrogate them and put them in the local jail in a place where the minute they're out, they're dead.
Yeah. I mean, I can't think of at this moment any crime worse than killing a child.
Yeah, exactly.
Killing and raping a child. I mean, other than killing a heavily pregnant woman, I really honestly can't think of anything worse.
So why he wasn't moved, nobody understands why. That makes no sense. Gentil, however, maintains his version in front of the judge.
Okay.
Doesn't change it. So doesn't withdraw his confession.
Well, if he doesn't
doesn't even know he can.
Yeah, he doesn't have the intellect, but
Probably not, no. After the confessions, the gendarmes start their inquiry. They need to prove that what the confessions say match the facts.
Yeah.
Because confession is not sufficient.
No. Especially not in the 80s. I mean, surely they would have enough to...
Especially when the confessions varied quite a lot.
Yes. And one's been retracted.
Yes. So that lasts about 27 months. So a bit
27 months?
A bit over 2 years.
Holy crap. So were they inside that whole time?
Yes.
Okay, fair enough.
So first, the gendarmes searched the farm, and they found some drugs there, hashish and stuff. Nothing special. That's not entirely surprising. Romain was a hippie.
No. I mean, if you're living in a tent, you probably have an alternative lifestyle.
Exactly.
Yeah. Although, let's face it, at this day and age, hash is hardly an alternative lifestyle.
Yes. On the 16th of June 1989, a new reenactment is organized, but without the two men. It turns into a riot in a village.
Mm.
The lawyers for Romain and Gentil, who are there, are attacked by the uncles and father of the girl.
The sad thing is, even scumbags deserve, professional legal representation in court. It's just the way it is.
Yes, but they're the ones who are getting attacked now.
Yeah, because they're there. But
the judge even has to cancel, eventually, send everybody home to avoid a bloodbath, because at that point the gendarmerie has come back with reinforcements.
Jesus.
They even have snipers on the top of buildings, because it's turning really nasty. Even the judge receives threats from the family. So the inquiry is totally messy at that point.
Yeah.
And it gets worse because the judge is replaced, and then the next one replaced, and the next one replaced 5 times.
That's not surprising. I mean, we've lived in small villages, and we know that the behaviour is weird, and you seem to lose perspective, and everything that happens in the village for certain people is just their whole life.
Yes.
So when
and
stuff
grudges last hundreds of years.
Yes, and the gene pool's small, and I mean it is just. I mean, it's just utterly crazy.
Yeah. So the judges change a lot for 2 years, and by July 1989, news articles relate the mess of the inquiry and pinpoint that the evidence in this case, which is mostly DNA, proves that Gentil's actions are roughly how he described it.
Right.
But that contradicts the fact that he didn't participate in the murder, and there is absolutely nothing that shows that Romain was involved. So they find, for example, sperm on the girl.
Right.
That's Gentil's.
Right.
But he said that Romain also raped the girl. No trace of that. They find blood in places. It's Gentil's.
Right.
Not a trace of Romain's blood. There is no evidence at all that Romain was anywhere near the scene.
So we can kind of understand why he's retracted his statement then.
Yes.
Okay.
And what probably happened was somehow it was a fake confession. So during the interrogation, he was given information that he just eventually repeated.
Yeah.
And that was his last confession where he says, I did it. And that's why it matched Gentil's confession, because the gendarmes probably told him what Gentil had said.
Yeah. The police are feeding them correct information.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that's probably how they ended up matching.
Okay.
But there is not a trace of evidence that he was involved.
Okay.
On the 22nd of October 1990, a new judge, again, some of the judges come back several times and disappear again. Two of them are pregnant. There's 2 women, so they all get pregnant like the minute they're assigned the case. So they disappear quickly. One of them comes back 3 times, and it's totally messy.
Well, no wonder you remember it when you were a kid. It must have been in the
it was in the news forever.
The news forever,
yeah. The new judge in 1990 decides that Romain couldn't have taken part in a murder.
Right.
There's no evidence of it. That's nothing. All they have is the confession and the accusation from the other accused. Yeah. That's all they have. Given witness accounts and timelines, he couldn't even have been with them that evening, because eventually they have enough witnesses. It's just not possible.
Right.
I remember some of the gendarmes tried to do the trip that he's supposed to have done, and they just can't make it in time. It's just not possible. He couldn't possibly have been with them.
He would have needed a bike.
Essentially, yes. It's not possible.
So he's let out then, is he?
Well, the judge contacts the parents to tell them that they're going to release him.
Oh, God.
And pronounce called a non-lieu, which means it didn't happen. The justice can't prove that he's guilty. The family appeals. I think they appeal even before he knows he's going to be let out. So he's freed from prison after 27 months in prison.
Right.
But family members have sworn to kill him, and they track him down. On the 14th of November 1990, the appeal court cancels his release. The new judge has him arrested again on the 26th of April 91, and he's sent to prison to... The charge is that he's sent to prison to stop the disorder, the public disorder that his release created.
That is...
So he's essentially accused of being responsible for what the family does, and is kind of also protective custody because they know he's not going to make it if he's out.
That's crazy.
Yes.
That's nuts.
That is nuts. They know he's going to be dead if they let him out, so they just arrest him again.
It's so sad for that family. I mean, I can't imagine. I don't have children. I mean, I just can't imagine just how much their whole life was turned upside down. But you can't be the judge and the jury and the executioner. It just is not. That's nuts. That is nuts.
It is nuts. Yes.
I can't get over that.
So it goes to trial because they have no choice at that point. They arrested him again. So they're both sent to trial. It starts on the 30th of November 1992.
Right.
The building is where the trial takes place is surrounded by hundreds of gendarmes and snipers. Again.
Why are they not moving this?
Oh, it's not anywhere near the village. But the family brought up tons of people with them.
God.
So there's hundreds of gendarmes, there's snipers. It's crazy again.
That's just nuts. They should have moved it to Paris or something. That's mental.
Yeah, I guess. During the interrogations during the trial, a witness called Christian Célérier declares that the gendarmes put pressure on him to change his testimony to match what Gentil had confessed.
Right.
They told him, you don't want to protect a monster.
Yeah.
And he said, oh, no, I don't want to. Then you need to say that. And that's what he did.
Okay.
So that's at least one testimony sort of at the window, probably several.
What is it with the police in the 70s and 80s?
Yes, yeah. The gendarmes, for that guy's case, the gendarmes made him change the times that he had reported seeing Roman. God. So that Roman had time then to be at the murder scene. Because with his original testimony, it wasn't possible.
Yeah.
It's like, I saw him in the village at 10. He couldn't possibly be in the orchard at 10:30 because it's way too far.
Yeah.
So they say, oh, are you sure it's 10? Maybe it was 9. Okay, it was 9. And then he had time. So that's thrown out. Then on the 11th of December 92, Gentil, put under pressure by the judge during long interrogations during the trial, confesses to one of his lawyers that he was the only one involved in the murder and asks for Roman's forgiveness. So the lawyer reports it to the judge, kind of. What he really said was that he wasn't entirely sure that Roman was there, that he might have imagined his presence, that somehow he materialized him because he wished he was there. The same way he doesn't see himself kill the girl, but he might have. And when people hear what he says, it's explained in a way that a guy with an IQ of 68 would never do. Forrest Gump would have never explained things that way. It's like a psychologist explaining things.
Yeah. Well, so, I mean, that's a coping mechanism. You minimize what you've done.
Yes, but no, that's the form that people question.
Yes.
What people are saying is that looks like it was fed to him by his lawyer.
Yeah.
But where did it come from in the first place? We don't know. But a lot of people are saying that explanation was given to him by his lawyer, and he said yes because he's an idiot. So nobody really knows what's going on there. But what the judge received from the lawyer is he changed his confession, and now Roman is no longer part of the murder. On the 12th of December, Gentil is sentenced to life in prison with a minimum of 28 years.
Mm-hmm.
And Roman is freed. Because not only there's no evidence, but now there's not even an accusation from anyone.
Okay, and
he's now just a guy who happened to live in the village.
And I hope we're now going to discuss how much compensation he's going to get for having to have lost more than 2 years of his life.
Yes, he'll get some compensation. The family seems to accept the judgment at that point.
Oh, and are now not going to kill him.
No, sorry. The family never accepts the judgment.
Right, okay, the complete opposite, okay.
For them, Gentil had been manipulated because he was a simple guy, but Roman was the thinking guy of the pair.
That he's not going to have been able to magic his DNA away.
They're not interested in that.
They're not interested in cold, hard facts.
No.
Oh, God.
So it's hard to know who's done what in the affair. The gendarmes did a rubbish job in the inquiry.
Oh, yes.
There's a lot of evidence that's not collected or not analysed. For example, they find cigarette butts. They never analyse whose cigarette butts it was. They find beer cans. They don't check where they were bought and who drank from them.
Jesus.
What is collected is badly stored. So, for example, the DNA. Mm-hmm. So they analyze the DNA straight away. But years later, when they want to check, it's gone because they stored it in the fridge instead of the freezer.
Ah, right, okay.
So DNA.
Crap, yes.
Gone.
Yeah.
Leads are not followed because they weren't interested in what people
like
said.
Tracker dogs, aren't they?
Yeah.
That's it. Once they're going down that one path, they're never going to deviate, yes.
There's witnesses that are not searched and questioned. For example, there's a Dutch couple, a couple of campers and at a campsite, so very close, who say they have seen men with a little girl near the campsite, but they were never contacted. So their name, because they were at the campsite, they were registered. They could have found their name. They lived in the Netherlands, but they could have easily got them questioned by the local police or whatever. Nope, nothing happens. There's a couple of Austrian workers as well who were illegally hired on one of the farms, who eventually contact the police themselves. So they call the police on their own to say that they saw two men and a girl and stuff. And they don't want to talk to the gendarmerie at where they live because they're worried that because they are illegally hired, they're going to land the owner of the whatever they do.
They might be thrown in
trouble. So they want to come to the gendarmerie.
Yeah.
They even call the gendarmerie on their way because they're hitchhiking.
Oh, God, okay.
To the gendarmerie across the country.
God love them.
They never make it.
Oh, no.
They disappear.
Oh, no.
Nobody knows what happened to them. We don't know if they changed their mind, if something happened to them.
Yeah.
They just disappear. Even though on the way, they were still on the phone with the gendarmerie, telling them where they were, their progress. At some point, after the last phone call, that's it. They're gone.
Oh, why is it nobody listens to me? Stop bloody hitchhiking, for the love of Jesus.
Yes. There's also a bunch of timeline conflicts that are never resolved, for example. So witnesses don't agree on times and places, and who cares? So nobody checks and nobody resolves those contradictions, and so on and so on. So the whole investigation was a total mess. It was very badly done, so that didn't help.
Yeah.
The changes of judges didn't help either. The pressure from the locals and the family certainly didn't help.
No. Camera heads definitely needed to prevail.
Lots of witnesses refusing to talk to the gendarmerie because they're scared that if what they say doesn't lead to a conviction, they're going to be dead too.
Yeah.
Once the family knows what they've said.
Yeah.
So a lot of people refuse to talk to the gendarmes. So anyway, the whole thing is a complete mess. On the upside, if Roman was really innocent, he didn't spend his life in prison. I guess that's the upside. And that's really the end of the story at that point. There is an epilogue.
Okay.
Gentil is accused by another murderer to have taken part in a murder while he was in the army years earlier.
Okay.
But that comes out later. The timeline matches everything, that he was in the right place for what he's accused of doing, that he could have done it, and everything works.
So this might have been his second murder then.
It could have been his second murder, but he denies the first one. his lawyer says that Gentil had been on the news so much because of that story for years that the murderer just decided, I'll accuse him to have been with me.
Right.
That's what his lawyer says.
Okay.
That's all we know, because that never go anywhere. The inquiry is unable to prove that he actually took part in the murder. So because they can't prove that, then they just, that's it.
Yeah, so you can't take it any further,
They can't take it more further than that.
No.
As for Roman, he was completely destroyed by the experience.
Well, yeah.
He does several stints in psychiatric hospitals over the next few years.
Poor guy.
The rest of the time he lives on the street in Annecy, so still in the Alps.
Yeah.
Even though he received compensation for his time in prison, I can't remember, it wasn't huge. It was a small sum of money, something like 100,000 euros or something. But he still lives in the street anyway. So he could have lived somewhere else.
He didn't seem to be very money focused anyway.
No. He becomes an addict.
Of course he does.
He's still harassed and threatened by the family at that point. And he's found dead on the 23rd of June 2008. According to the AME, because of use of drugs, but the AME rules out suicide and overdose.
Okay.
Essentially, he's saying that he was taking drugs and it led to health issues, and that's what he died of. But he didn't die of an overdose, and it's not a suicide.
Right, so it's like a heart failure or...
Yeah, something like that, or blood poisoning over time, or liver giving up, whatever, something like that. So he's not dead from ingesting drugs.
Yeah.
And that's the end of the story.
And I think it's something that's demonstrated that you think that what happens when one person's murdered, that there's one victim. And I think this story shows you that there's a lot more victims and a lot more sadness, sadly.